Hi. Today I want to talk to you about something that I gave up about 8 years ago, and that is sugar. And I want to give you a little bit of a idea on how sugar affects your immune system and the rest of your body. What exactly is sugar and how you can reduce it in your life. So I didn't totally give up sugar. I gave up refined sugar. And over the past 8 years, I have really only allowed it into my life in very, very limited, small amounts. But generally, I live a totally refined, sugar-free life. So it is possible. But let's chat about how sugar affects your body. So sugar affects a lot of systems within our body. And probably the main one is insulin. So it's a very complex, process that affects our hormones, our metabolic responses, our immune system processes, but insulin is the main player. And what insulin does is it normalizes our blood sugar. And that's a great function. But what happens is it is constant. It happens all the time, and because it is such a constant process, eventually our cells become totally overwhelmed and they lose the ability to do their job. And this results in insulin resistance, and insulin resistance leads to type 2 diabetes. So that is probably the big thing with sugar and the most commonly known factor about having too much sugar. But sugar also reduces your white blood cells' ability to perform properly. And obese people actually have fewer white blood cells, which reduces their ability to fight infection. Hey, Jonathan. And sugar also suppresses our immune system for up to 5 hours. So this means that if you are having some kind of sugar with every meal, your immune system is constantly being suppressed by the sugar that is in your system. So it may be helpful to create some meals that don't contain sugar to help to give your immune system a bit of a break. The other thing that sugar does, hey Freya, thanks for joining us. It stimulates dopamine. That is the reward hormone. And then you get the sugar crash. And so, and this is like that, blood sugar highs and lows that you experience. But this is why they believe that sugar is, hello Freya, sugar is considered as addictive as cocaine. So just think about that for a minute. Obviously it doesn't have the same effects, but it has the same addictive quality in that when you have it, you need to have more of it. And you constantly need to be having more of it because of the effect that it is having on our system. It's pretty amazing to think that something as simple as humble sugar could have such an effect on our body. And sugar, it increases inflammation within our body. And inflammation is, a precursor to so many diseases. And that low-grade inflammation is particularly, related to cardiovascular disease, and a precursor to diabetes and dementia. And, so it has so many effects on all of our metabolic processes within our bodies. It also affects our adrenals, which is what controls our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So, excess sugar affects our cortisol levels. And if you're constantly having an excess of sugar, then you've got chronically elevated levels of cortisol on a constant basis. And, that is not healthy either for our system. So, what is sugar? And, there's the obvious of, the refined sugars that we, add to foods and add to our coffee. And, they fall into, there's lots and lots of different categories. And, cane sugar is the most common, but we also have coconut sugar and agave and maple syrup, rice malt syrup, glucose, and then there is a whole host of names given to various refined forms of sugar that are used in processed foods. And I might put a list of that in the comments, because it's really helpful to know when you shop where there is hidden sugars in foods. And what other ones are there? Like the dextrose, sucrose, maltose. Honey is a sugar. Even though it is natural, it still turns into sugar within your body. So there are two ways sugar turns into two simple sugars within your body, glucose and fructose. So most of our, organs within our body can use glucose in some way. Fructose can only be metabolized by the liver cells. And, that is why we just have so many issues with all of the various, because we consume so much sugar on a regular basis. And, the other things that are not so obvious that are sugars within your body and you may think are healthy and quite, normal and good for you, are things like pasta and bread, rice, all those sorts of things. But any refined kind of grain, doesn't matter whether it's wheat or whether it's gluten-free grains, anything that is refined essentially into a flour and made into something else turns into glucose within your body. And your body has got to then deal with that glucose. If it doesn't burn it up, it stores it as fat. And it's not just the problem of burning it up, which is what we used to believe. It is the constant stress on our system of having to balance those sugar levels all the time with, insulin. And it puts a lot of stress on our body. And then even healthier things like whole grains and rice, those sorts of things, they don't release the sugar as fast within your body, but they still turn into glucose within your body. And then you've got fruit, and lots of vegetables contain sugar as well. And I'm not saying that you should cut out those things by any means, but we have to, and what we need to remember with fruit and vegetables is that when they're eaten in their whole state, they contain fibre and they contain vitamins and minerals and trace elements that are all really, really important for our body to function healthfully. So, fruit needs to be not consumed in excess, and particularly because of the fructose level in fruit. but a healthy amount of vegetables, and honestly, you really can't eat too many vegetables because the vitamins and minerals and the phytonutrients and everything in vegetables far outweighs the amount of sugar they have. Unless you're on a particularly, you want to lose weight particularly fast. So, what are the sugars that you should cut out? It really is refined sugar. When you look at, that big picture, and I always come back to, can I eat this in a more whole state? How it is found in nature. So, that is your fruits and your vegetables. And all those refined foods and highly processed foods, that is where you will find the refined sugars. So when you shop, skirt around the outside of the supermarket and leave all that stuff in the middle that is highly processed, because if we took out everything in the supermarket that contained processed sugar, we would only be left with 20% in the supermarket. So that means 80% of the products in our supermarkets contain refined sugar. And that's pretty scary. And like I said before, hey Carly, sugar is addictive. So what better way for the food industry to sell us more products than by putting sugar in them so that we crave more, desire more, want more to satisfy that dopamine hit? It's brilliant marketing, but it's not so brilliant for our health. So my advice is to reduce those refined sugars. The sugars that we find in fruits and vegetables are, they're healthy sugars in their whole natural state. It's those refined sugars that are really the precursors to serious disease and illness and diabetes and cardiovascular disease, that if we can really reduce those in our diet, we are going to help to maintain a healthy weight. We are going to, be able to remain healthy. Oh, the other thing that sugar does too, if you're concerned about aging, is sugar causes glycation. So glycation is when sugar molecules bind to protein molecules. And what is your skin made up of? Collagen and elastin, 2 proteins. So when sugar binds to those, it makes them brittle. Instead of being nice and flexible and all, interwoven and, like a nice, how do you describe it? Elastic that keeps everything supported, they become brittle and they break. And this causes us to age on the outside, but also on the inside. We're made up of so many different proteins within our body. So excessive sugar causes us to age as well. So, there's so many reasons why we should be reducing those refined sugars in our life. And it's a hard process. I've been doing this for a long time now, and 8 years ago when I started the process, it was difficult because sugar is addictive. And giving it up is not that easy, but it is possible. So I encourage you to look at, the foods that you've got in your fridge and your pantry, and start to read labels and learn what all the different kinds of processed sugars are, so that you can become aware and educated and make informed choices for yourself.